Welcome to Hidden Squidz Gaming. Today we'll be putting our faith into Far Cry 5. Far Cry 5 is $60 off sale. First section, what you do / plot.
Montana.
The start of the game demonstrates some awesome graphics and the overall exposition for the plot. You see a series of individuals that you'll meet in the game, and you get a feel for the future environment / background for the game. Joseph Seed and his family have started to take over large counties in Montana and are shaping them into God's image through Joseph's words. His family consists of John Seed, the Baptist, Jacob Seed, the soldier, and Faith Seed, the controller / manipulator. The game starts with the intent to arrest Joseph Seed with a federal marshal and a sheriff of Hope County. Obviously, things do not go smoothly, or the option that does make it go smoothly is inherently a waste of $60. The overall purpose of the game is to fight back against the Seed family and free Hope County from the reign of the cult. Section 2. Map / layout. The map is split into 3 rather large territories, one consisting of each herald. Joseph and Dutch also get their little island portion respective to the beginning of the game and the ending of the game. The main gameplay takes place in the Whitetail Mountains, the Henbane River, and the Holland Valley. Each area uniquely has its own feel and purpose within the cult, and the missions typically reflect those values. Within these areas there are different fish, different animals, and different NPCs, some of which are more memorable than others. The game also places incentives throughout the map for you to explore and have purpose for most of the places that you end up being in. Certain areas of the game are also just beautiful and have a sense of tranquility if you aren't being attacked by a black bear or cougar or random helicopters. This game can get a little too action-y packed sometimes for my taste, but that's later. Outposts, prepper stashes, and main story missions fill in the map pretty well, along with collectibles you'll find throughout the game whether you have the mission or not. Overall, the map is worth exploring on the road and off the road, but the animal attacks can be semi-frequent and can become a hassle at moments, as I just stated before. Section 3. Characters. Far Cry 5 has many characters, and some of them are more forgettable than others, but you have the 9 companions that can join you, about 2 to 3 NPCs that never join you but give you quest-related items, and then there's random other people around Hope County that are willing to fight with you. The main bad guys consist of Joseph Seed, John Seed, Jacob Seed, and Faith Seed. They're all family. The 3 J's, Jacob, John, and Joseph, are all brothers, and Faith Seed is the adopted sister. I've made another video on her if you want to look up more about her. There are other small bad guys in the game with smaller roles, such as the cook in the Whitetail region. However, they do not play nearly as large a role as the 4 listed previously. Those are more side missions, but they do get you a little more involved with how people grew up in the cult and whether they decided to fight against it or they decided to fight for it. As mentioned before, some of the characters have really fun side missions, and others have forgettable moments that really don't do anything for the game. And I'll talk about that later. I think Far Cry 5 should have had more missions affect the game directly rather than just be something for you to do. Some of the characters continue the story, others not so much. Not all characters have to continue the story, but some are definitely just there for a good time, which is also good since not everything has to be serious in a game like this. It makes fun of itself. The director character has political characters making fun of modern politics and those who poke fun at the world. The game can just make fun of itself at moments, which is slightly appreciative in nowadays world of just critical reviews of everything. As stated before, I personally think the main characters are really strong in the Seed family with some additional background. I know some people say the main characters are generic, fleshed out, and they are if you don't get additional information on them or if you don't really analyze what they say. I understand it's a cult and they have very generic cult-like values, however each character does come from a very individualistic background and it's interesting to see how they got here. I'm not saying they're the best characters ever created in games, but I do think they have decent stories. The ally NPCs you do quest for feel generic and have little meaning or interaction with them to get a very different feeling. I think one of the reasons for this is the game can be done very quickly, and this doesn't necessarily allow a lot of time to bond between certain characters. I didn't expect Far Cry 5 to be a game where the campaign took me 20 hours to complete. Once again, the main villains, you get their backstory from others, you get them from their point of view, and you also have your own point of view, not being the character, but in real life. Dutch is also kind of guy who just jumpstarts the game off and narrates everything as you go along. I can definitely see the characters in Far Cry 5 being a little weak as some of the animals actually highlight over some of the humans. Some of the people also are just a little too generic and stereotypical to maybe have that much fun with. Gameplay style. This is a first-person shooter and is not made to be the most realistic game out there either. Let's get that out of the way. Some of the guns feel a little underwhelming, however most of the weapons feel good and the customizations are really nice. They don't restrict you to a few guns with a few attachments. A lot of them can have the same attachments, thus making them a loud weapon, a quiet weapon, a long-range weapon, a short range, you name it, you can probably do it on most of the guns you like. I personally walked around the game with an automatic rifle, a semi-automatic rifle / sniper, a bow, and a grenade launcher. I had my loud, I had my quiet, and I had my just guns blazing weapons on me at all times. This was obviously at the end of the game when I could hold 4 weapons. When you're in the beginning, when you'll hold 1 or 2, you kind of have to go the all stealth route or the all explosion route. It's kind of hard to get back and forth until you get enough perk points to get to the point of a one-man army. Stealth is also a viable option in this game and is actually encouraged for side missions such as outpost and hostage rescue missions. So it's not always just your run and gun, mindless exploding stuff. It can be, absolutely. The whole entire time you can run around with a heavy machine gun and grenade launcher and give 2 craps about how much quiet you are, and I like playing games like that. I also found it exciting to take in the challenge of doing outposts quietly, or doing hostage missions to make sure none of my additional hostages die, so it added a nice mix of being stealth and also just being as loud as you can. Also, doing an outpost stealthily, you got an incentive of extra money if you weren't detected, which was always nice in the earlier game. What I will say is making money in Far Cry 5 isn't really an issue, so doing the extra 1,000 for an undetected stealth outpost isn't necessarily the biggest incentive. The enemies do not feel overly redundant either, since they come in cars, airplanes, helicopters. They use bows, rockets, snipers, heavily armored, and the judges in Jacob's region. They're almost always the same cultists, but at least they have different weapons and sometimes behave differently. I know some people complain about the AI. At moments the AI are pretty stupid, but once you put the game on hard, you do have to adapt a little better. The AI could have been better, but with how frequently show up, it's almost needed that they're not as advanced as they could be. By now, I am sure you have also seen the massive amount of bears and wildlife attacks. I don't know what to say, they do happen frequently once you go off-road. One of the problems I have with the game is the moment you go off-road, you're getting murdered by random animals everywhere. If you stay on the road, it feels like you run into a cultist every 30 seconds to a minute, and when you're starting the game, that gets extremely difficult. Far Cry 5 is an enjoyable shooter and allows you to use the creativity to make repetitive tasks feel different and enjoyable each time. Section 5. Replayability. Far Cry 5's replayability goes about as far as achieving the alternate ending and completing missions that you may not have done the first time. Also, there may be lines of dialogue and other places you did not fully appreciate or understand the first time through. I would argue Far Cry 5 was not made for a lot of replayability. Yes, there's 2 different ending options, and it's probably the main reason why you would go back and do the other. What really adds the depth and content to Far Cry 5 is the side content, I'll call it. This content consists of outposts, side missions, collectibles, prepper stashes, other notes you find in the game, arcade editor, arcade multiplayer, playing with your friend. I mean, there is a lot to do in the game and a lot to explore. Once again, you kind of have to get through the wild animal attacks and sometimes cultists finding you at every nook and cranny on the map. Once you clear out a section though, it's not so bad. You get a little more breathing room you can discover with less frequent cultist attacks, and the animal attacks can be farther and few in between. There's also a perk to make animal attacks slightly less aggressive against you, thus saving you a little more time.
Well, looks like I am gonna have to change the name of my business after all, huh?
Section 6. Hard Mode. I put hard mode in the review because it is worth noting the scenario of it. Hard starts off insanely challenging in my honest opinion. However, the difficulty is an exponential decrease in difficulty. What do I mean by that? The first truck ride is actually insanely hard on hard. I died like 5 to 10 times. It was actually very difficult. In the first region, I went to John's, which probably wasn't the best because he needed 13,000 resistance points. I also felt like his region was one of the most heavily armed and guarded. However, after I got to 3 resistance points and I got some decent assault weapons and I got a health boost, the game got significantly easier. Not even like proportionally, significantly easier. And once you get a companion who can pick you up, the game is just not a cakewalk, but it's hard to sometimes notice the difficulty between easy and hard, in all honesty. The only real difference I've noticed is the amount of bullets I can take, and I'm pretty sure that is the only difference in the game. On easy, I can run through an outpost running and gunning and not giving a crap who shoots me or what shoots me. In hard mode, I still had to take cover and whatnot, but the amount of times I died after John C's region was just virtually like 0. Section 7. Ending of the game. This is the big one. I think this is what breaks the game for a lot of people and put it into a negative review standpoint. I was on the edge about this, and after some more research, I've come to grasp and accept the endings of the game a little more than I initially did. The endings of this game could be labeled as literally disastrous and plotline disastrous. There are 3 endings to Far Cry 5, and the secret ending one is amusing and debatably the best one for the player. As I've said before, you do not want to settle on this ending where it would be a waste of $60 US. The other 2 endings at the ending of the game are, well, not the greatest outcomes for the player or the people we were supposed to care about. Far Cry 5 does try something different that other games wouldn't in their endings, however I think it comes off a little bit wrong. It gives you options, and I did care about some of the NPCs in the endgame, hence why at the beginning I chose to fight Joseph Seed over the option of giving a second chance to leave. I was not there to about leave all my friends behind to this man, since I've been fighting against him for the past it was like 20 in-game hours. This obviously led to fighting Joseph, and the nuclear war starts. The nuclear war was hinted at by Faith Seed, and you got a feeling that there was an option where Joseph was predicting a nuclear war. However, it didn't really strike me until the bomb went off, and I thought, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Like, the option to fight him starts a nuclear war. He warned about this through Faith, but I felt like kind of cheated. The other options leave all your companions behind. It's like Nick, Rye, Sharky, and all those people you just played with. And then you leave with Hudson, Pratt, and the Sheriff, Whitehorse. That's fine, you know, like, okay, I was willing to sacrifice my friends, to walk away, drive in a car, and do something about Joseph Seed. So you're in the car, you're driving, and then the sheriff turns on the radio, and he's mentioning, hey, you know, we're gonna go get the National Guard, we are not rolling over to this dude, and we're gonna do something about it. You're like, oh yeah, sweet, you know, there's gonna be an ending where, like, the National Guard comes in, and, like, there's a huge cult war, whatever, yada yada yada. No. Good old Jacob kicks in here with some classical conditioning in the end, and because I saw it as the will of God, puts on the song Only You. And when you hear the song Only You, you turn into a psychotic killer, killing everyone in your path. So we're left to assume once he turns on the radio, you probably just go ballistic on those 3, and no one ever gets to National Guard, which I have a somewhat of a problem with because they're still you. Unless you kill yourself in the end, you could still go to the National Guard and report this. Yes, you just killed 3 of your friends, but there's really nothing personally stopping you. Like I said, unless you kill yourself, but the game doesn't go in further depth about that. This leaves your options as starting a nuclear war with Korea, where everyone you love still dies, or killing everybody you love and having an ending that's a little more in the air than the other one. I think for the casual gamer, they should have made a 3rd ending where if you worked a little harder and if you did things a certain way, you could have potentially maybe have gotten to Joseph, or Joseph would understand and stop what he's doing. I know this would contradict what Ubisoft was doing, because then I think what I'm going to say is in their eyes, they saw this as, you know, God's plan, God's will. You can't mess with it. You get choices, but in the end, they ultimately end up with you either follow the Lord's words or you go against them. I understand that concept. However, I don't necessarily want that in my video games, because I don't want to play video games and be locked into 2 concepts because of what the creators did. Like I said, I understand the concept in real life. I understand people believe that, and if that does exist, but we always come back to the conclusion, then why bother? If nothing I'm going to do is actually going to be a positive outcome in the end for me, I would recommend not doing it. I play video games to kind of go against the system, do what I want, and change the world I'm in, not do something for 25 hours and be like, oh, it didn't matter. I understand the frustration. I do think Far Cry 5's endings are unique, however, very frustrating as I just said. It would maybe be a cool movie where, you know, you didn't just spend 20 hours of your life playing, or it would also be like a nice twist. However, it just felt kind of out of place in Far Cry 5, and I wish there was another ending you could have done that was slightly better for everyone involved. I do have to give props to Ubisoft. I appreciate them trying something different. I don't want to play the same old predictable video game. I just think there are some other things they could have done to make this section slightly better.
So be it.
Section 8, Multiplayer. I'm going to get this out of the way. I played the multiplayer section once with other people in the first month and the server crashed on me. Did not put a good taste in my mouth. I did not try it since. Well, no, that's a lie. I tried since, but I couldn't find anybody. So I don't know if the multiplayer section right now is actually still even alive and doing well. However, I'm still going to leave multiplayer in there because you can play co-op, and I have seen other people say the co-op occasionally cuts out on you, but I do like the idea of it. Whether Ubisoft has bad servers or good servers, I'm going to try to take that out of the equation, but it's still very important because if Ubisoft can't get better servers, it doesn't matter that it was a cool idea in the game because you can't use it. I see Far Cry 5 as like an open world game where you're not railroaded to the main story and you can go around with a friend and explore stuff and have fun memories without having to progress the story every time you do something, which is really nice. A new mode is introduced via the arcade editor and arcade mode. This does bring in the multiplayer, as I just said. I didn't really get the chance to play that. However, I did get to play single player mode and I did enjoy that. The single player mode, you go through maps and stuff that people have made, and these consist of liberating outposts, eliminating all enemies, or escaping a zone at the end of the maze. Some people are really creative and made it a lot of fun. Their maps are actually pretty in-depth. I played some multiple times as I would cycle through the featured maps. I would discover new little things every time. I'm like, oh look, this person really thought of like a decent amount of ways you could do this. Like, they were really short if you wanted them to, but they're also a lot more complex. I thought this was an awesome idea. It gives players and fans a chance to contribute to their game and allows people who play the game see what other people do. It gives you experience to contribute something to your favorite video game series and have a lot of people play it and appreciate it. I would highly recommend checking out some of the featured maps just to see what people build. Some were significantly better than others, but in the end I enjoyed and appreciated how much time they put into it, because if you do the arcade editor, a lot goes into it. It's not like I add some trees here, I pop this up here, a lot of stuff goes into it. Section 9. Final Thoughts. I would highly recommend this game to anyone who has been on the fence about the game. I know there's a lot of negative reviews out there and news articles that go around saying how short it came up for the casual gamer. On Steam, it's mixed reviews right now and it's hovering around 68% overall, which is only 2 points away from a positive review, and it has been going down, however, over time. The reviews offer some useful information rather than just pointless yelling and flaming as some games do, which is nice. As mentioned before, the endings are one of the biggest and most frequent complaints I see why the game has a negative review. I would also agree the endings are very difficult to overcome because you just spend all that time in it, and as I said before, you really don't gain anything from it besides, I would argue, disappointment and defeat. If the ending of the game is of mass importance to you, in which it really is in Far Cry 5, because there is limited content within the game, the ending should be something we cherish and remember. The game does a great job invoking emotion, however it's usually frustration and misunderstanding, which is maybe not what you want to invoke at the end of your games. They are memorable endings though, in the sense of how, I guess you could say, how bad they were or how surprising they were, so they do achieve something, just maybe not what Ubisoft planned on. Another weird thing, which I kind of noticed the first 10 hours and just chose to accept, but I didn't necessarily always like it, your character never talks. I don't really like that your character never talks. You just kind of act like a puppet who goes around blowing stuff up and you don't have any interaction with the world. Even when you get choices to interact with the enemies by, like, with John Seed, you can say yes and stuff. Your character doesn't even, like, say yes or something. You hear your character scream and stuff when they get shot, but I'd rather my character interact than scream when they're getting shot. That's just me. The game certainly has its flaws and could feel underwhelming in certain areas. I won't disagree with this. The perk system was a decent way of receiving perks, but I found myself just doing things for the sake of doing things to get more perks. I wasn't necessarily enjoying them or It didn't seem like I really cared about what I got from them, just as long as I got my perk point. The hunting felt disappointing, because I felt like there should have been like a rare animal or something about killing a rare animal that should have gotten me something more than just a perk point, or nothing at all other than just more money for the skin. They were the judges, but they were affected by the bliss, and they were a story mission that was just more of like, hey, blow this crap up or kill them because they're big and bad. It wasn't like, oh, this is the rare blah blah blah. There were 2 fish, which was nice. Fishing felt like what hunting should have been. A lot of people remember the Admiral and talk about the Admiral. Why? It was a difficult fish to catch, and you got something from doing it that wasn't just a perk point. You got the Wonder Boy fishing rod, so you're like, yes, I caught this really hard fish to catch, and I got something for it. Not like, oh, I went there with a helicopter, strafed a freaking cougar, and I got my 800 whatever, you know. The judges, nothing about it stuck with me. Their environments, where they were, the Judge Moose did, because it was amusing. I walked in there, and like, there's just like so many of them. It was kind of amusing at first. But like the Judge Bear and the Judge Cougar, I just went around exploding them with explosives, because I was like, well, this is just gonna be, it's a waste of time. There's like no hunt. It's just me going somewhere and dealing with a bliss-filled animal. And once again, to come back to that hunting, even when you killed an alpha compared to a regular, the only difference was how much you could sell them for. And the game was extremely easy to make money to begin with, so you didn't really have to even go hunting unless you needed a perk point to get something else. And one more thing about the gunplay. It was just very annoying that I couldn't shoot through walls in Far Cry 5 with armor-piercing bullets on. I feel like I should have done more work than I could. Ultimately, Far Cry 5, I did like the story, and the endings and the characters in the main campaign will stick with me. Whether they, you know, were good or bad, this game will definitely stick with me for a while. I would categorize this game as you don't have to play it. However, if you get a good deal on it, definitely worth the buy in my opinion. A quick couple of notes, ironically notes. The game, a lot of the information is within the notes and you can get some more enjoyment out of them. However, this does require you to find them, read them carefully, and then relate them back to the story. The casual gamer isn't always going to do this, and sometimes you just don't find them. Like, you do search and you just don't find them. You overlook them or you don't understand, you know, it can be a little rough to leave a lot of the backstory to notes that people may or may not find in the game. And what I mean by this is a lot of the villain stories went deeper than just what they said. Some of the notes and the voicemails allowed you to see into their mind and their past and their future and how they feel now. And someone got you to connect with them more or understand them more as a person than anybody could have told you in-game and what they would have told you in-game. I do think the game made some really good villains that weren't just the most generic, replicated people. However, I think a lot of the stuff was found in notes and voicemails, and if you didn't find those, yeah, they were pretty generic and uninteresting. Far Cry 5 is a good, casual, fun game, but the story is nothing that will win awards or have people driving flocks to. I did enjoy the casual gameplay and most of the side missions. If you enjoy a shooter with humor and no real main character development, Far Cry 5 is the game for you. I would recommend Far Cry 5, not by large margins, but enough to put a positive review up. I would highly recommend buying the game on sale, just so in case you don't like the endings, you at least get to save $12 to $15. Thank you for watching. If you like this, subscribe and like below.